r/AskReddit. Why did that teacher get fired from your school? He got a female student pregnant at the same time his wife was pregnant. His wife was and still is a gym teacher at the school. This one you can find in the news. It's hard to explain in story format, so here's a sequence of events. Chemistry teacher and boys/girls water polo coach, same guy, calling him Mr. V for simplicity's sake, went on a business trip to Texas. Mr. V has a Grindr account. In this particular area of Texas, there is an amateur to catch a predator team on YouTube. They set up the bait by contacting men and claiming to be underage after a conversation with the man. In this case, the bait was 14 years old. Mr. V has a conversation with the bait on Grindr, supposedly during a business event, in which he sends nudes and asks sexual questions. Explicit photos are sent by Mr. V both before and after learning that the bait is 14. You can clearly see his face in the nudes that he sent. Mr. V asks the bait to meet him at a Walmart so that he can give the bait a BJ and potentially have sex in one of the bathrooms. Mr. V pretends to have stomach pain, leaves the business event, and goes to the Walmart to meet someone who he thinks is a 14-year-old boy. The sting takes place and the amateur TCAP team traps him and follows him around Walmart, yelling at him and accusing him of being a pedo. Mr. V acts as if he doesn't know them at all. That all took place last summer, and someone from our school discovered the video online and recognized him around December or January. She embezzled thousands of dollars from various club funds. There were also rumors of her sleeping with students, but the administration never bothered to look into that. Arrested by the FBI for credit card fraud. It was a few months after the arrest when the reason why he disappeared came out in the open. She was always drunk, and drinking during class. She would leave us to cry in the bathroom. Our new band teacher was a young guy, fresh out of college. His first year teaching and he embezzled about $1,000 from the band's funds. He got arrested and his possible future career ruined for $1,000. Edit, probably my favorite part of the story was that he went by the name Mr. E. So once he was gone, the ruthless band kids referred to him as Mr. Embezzlement. Oh boy, where to start? Elementary school nurse was fired for taking the kids' medications. High school band teacher slept with a 15-year-old. Swim coach left a hotel that he was at with his mistress drunk and killed someone with his car. My high school had like 400 students. One of the elementary school teachers at the district I went to got arrested for making his class worship him like he was a cult leader. He was totally bonkers. I had a football coach like that. He made us call him God. I signed out of the team pretty quickly. A coworker teacher got fired 2 weeks in the new semester, when instead of uploading a video related to his subject, he instead accidentally continued a previously paused hardcore lesbian scene on the big interactive screen. The computer he was using was slow and crappy too, so he couldn't quickly exit the video. It went on for a good 30 seconds before someone pulled the plug on the screen around the same time he lobbed the laptop about 30 feet across the class. Coach/history teacher, of course. First off, some of the early warning signs we all should have noticed first. He showed up the first day of school and told us he was a youth minister and that we would always see him in long sleeves and pants because he had tattoos and he regrets them. That he didn't want to accidentally encourage any of us to get some too. 2 weeks later he is in shorts and polo shirts showing off multiple Looney Tunes tattoos. He taught 6th grade US history out of a textbook. Word for word. We did multiple chapters a day and were expected to do every assignment listed for each chapter. This averaged about 3 hours of work a day. In 6th grade. He was the only class that year to regularly assign homework and he received multiple parent complaints about the workload. He would often leave the class alone to read chapters. He would then go out to the hall or parking lot to make out with his girlfriend who would arrive randomly. He was the middle school track coach and thus spent a lot of time in and around the middle school locker rooms. Too much time. He took photos of the kids running for the yearbook. These pictures eventually made it onto his work computer desktop. Then his phone background. Only the girls though. But the final straw that got us out of his care. He showed up to a middle school basketball game drunk and tried to yell at the ref. He was fired that day and not allowed back on campus. Wasn't a teacher but our vice principal. Essentially our principal bumped her twin niece's class ranks up to valedictorian and salutatorian. The vice principal, one of the nicest guys I've ever met and a truly amazing guy, did what was right and confronted the school board and told them that this was unfair to those who actually earned those ranks. Those twins were some of the most average people I've ever encountered in my life, and they didn't work nearly as hard as the other candidates for the spot. It doesn't help that everyone on the school board, including the superintendent, was related to the principal. Thus, our heroic vice principal was fired, and it was a shock to the whole school. They tried covering it up by saying he didn't have the proper documentation, education to be in his position, though if that was the case, I'm not sure why they would hire him and let him stay for the first 2 years of my high school career. Everyone knew it was a sham, and the local news actually got involved when I called them during lunch. That next football game, NBC showed up and there was a protest outside of the local library. I printed out almost 100 flyers that read, "What are you gonna do? Fire me? Save Lightfoot." The entire school was pissed, and the twins' ranks were promptly demoted back to 21st and 22nd in our class, though not until the next school year started. Geeky AV teacher that everyone loved. Knew he was a geek and owned it. Caught in a predator sting trying to solicit underage girls. The kicker was a spring school levy was coming up. Local police conspired with the school district to hide the charges for 3 weeks until the levy was passed. Someone substituted his class for 3 weeks. The principal of my elementary school got fired the first year he was hired. Or took leave before he was arrested. I'm not actually sure which came first. So a couple kids in my 4th grade class thought they'd prank the science teacher by pouring iodine and bleach into his coffee when he wasn't looking. The teacher tasted it as soon as the drink hit his tongue and immediately spit it out. He grilled the class and the kids admitted to it and got sent to the principal's office. The principal found out which of them physically poured the chemicals into the coffee, then took him into the bathroom to discipline him, hit him. Apparently he grabbed the bottom of his jaw while screaming in his face. You could hear him echoing through the hallway. Then he squeezed hard enough that the boy started crying. So he slapped him across the face and told him to stop crying. The kid's dad was a lawyer, by the way. Suddenly cops were in the building and our new principal was out the door. My high school of less than 500 students lost 5 teachers last year because they all had a relationship with the same 15-year-old girl. Kindergarten teacher would dig furrows into kids' arms with her long, sharp nails by basically holding their arms real tightly. She did this if she caught them misbehaving during recess. It happened to me when I was running when I shouldn't have. I think this was nearly 40 years ago. I showed the principal my arm as he was walking out one day and she was fired on the spot. I think I was 4 at the time and didn't realize exactly what I did at the time. Crazy stuff. He didn't get fired, he got forced into retirement, but it took multiple incidents over 5 years. Here are the biggest ones chronologically. 1. He bullied kids in front of the class repeatedly and was reported. He would rant about how kid X was never going to get anywhere in life and how kid Y would be an alcoholic in 10 years. While teaching a class. 2. He kept a spray bottle filled with water, and if he thought you weren't paying attention or you were too loud or too fidgety, or too, insert adjective here, he would spray you with it. After getting in trouble for ruining Skid's brand new MacBook, water in the keyboard, he doubled down and added some foul-smelling something so that if you got sprayed you would stink all day. 3. While teaching went off on a tangent about how girls who got assaulted were probably dressing revealing and therefore deserved it, in class, to a group of underage girls and boys. 4. His apology for number 3 was basically, "I'm sorry you feel offended, but the girls," yes, he used the word girls, not women, "who dress like that are super provocative and men just can't control themselves." Then the school board made him read a pre-written and legally approved script out to the class. 5. Dress-coded girls in a really creepy way. He would be teaching a lesson, constantly doing that dodgy looking at a girl's chest, then back to the lesson, then back to the chest thing, and then would call the girl out in front of the class, remarking on extreme specifics about what he could see and why it was provocative. Super weird. He was asked by the school to stop dress coding several times. 6. One time a student called him out on being an unfair grader and showing preferential treatment, and he went on a rant about how he has mental health issues and his parents were alcoholics, so if he killed himself it would be the student's fault. He was forced into retirement, after a long 5-year battle, in 2019. He was a high school chemistry teacher. This was in Canada. His son threw a party in 2018 and the whole school found out, showed up, and trashed his house. Do I condone it? No. But also, he kinda deserved it. Janitor filmed his teenage daughters in the shower. This was 25 years ago, so it was an elaborate rig using cameras that had filmed cassette tapes. Premeditated, creepy stuff. We looked through that house when it came on the market for sale and it had an awful feel, only realized later why. My football coach bullied the gay kid on the team enough that it had a big enough impact on him that the kid killed himself. The coach was mentioned in the note and the teacher/coach resigned. The coach was a total a-hole to people he didn't like, including me and a few others on the team. Since he wasn't allowed to kick kids off the team, he would pretty much bully the kids to quit. Man, do I got a story for this one. I apologize for the length, but it's worth a read. So I got a job as a PE teacher/coach at a K-12 school. It was the beginning of my second year and rumors were going around about a teacher having a relationship with a student. I just thought it was a rumor and moved on. A few days later we have a cross-country meet and I have to get to the school at 5:30 a.m. to leave for the meet. I noticed another car in the parking lot, which was gated closed, and no one around. This has never happened, so I called one of the other coaches and he was not sure and found it strange. I don't think much of it and go about my day. We get back from the meet around noon and the car is still there. Turns out it is one of the high school teacher's car that was left from the day before. I thought it was car troubles and decided to not think much of it. I arrived back to school on Monday and boy howdy did shit hit fan. The car was left it over the weekend not because of car troubles but much worse reasons. The car was left over the entire 48-hour weekend because the teacher who owned the car had a mental breakdown in class, couldn't control it and had his sister, who also worked at the school, take him home. He had a breakdown because his GF broke up with him. His girlfriend was his student. So once the story was confirmed, the police came and searched his classroom. His classroom had empty liquor bottles in the desk and his room was a mess. The teacher was fired and that was the last I heard of him. However, the story doesn't end there, folks. Because the sister of the convicted teacher was behind everything. Helped them arrange dates, meetups, and covered for him to keep the story hidden. She was fired a week later. I left the education world after that semester and never looked back. They found out his diploma was a forgery. He never attended or graduated from any college to be able to teach. No one was surprised because he didn't last a year and he didn't even attempt a lesson plan. So it was only a matter of time. No idea what he was thinking would happen. He accidentally made a really racist joke thinking the class would think it was funny. They didn't, of course, so he was fired that day. Teacher was found sitting in his car outside his apartment, naked, and babbling to himself. When a neighbor saw him sitting in his car naked, the cops were called. The cops arrived, escorted the teacher inside his apartment to get him some clothes, and found his girlfriend dead. Teacher beat her to death. Apparently committing murder will get your teaching certificate revoked. Also, one of my high school swim coaches was a teacher at a juvenile hall and she got fired from coaching because she crapped in a 5-gallon bucket in the back of our moving bus while we were driving to the aquatic center. There was a tornado in our area. The college I was in was leasing a multi-floor office building. Alarms were sounding outside, and people were retreating into the stairwells for safety. Teacher blew it off and said people were just making it up to be funny. Learned when I got home that the tornado was right outside the window I was sitting next to. Reported him to the faculty. So did others. He was gone the following week. Okay, so this is a serious one. A really poor dude, 16 male, that walked to school with his mom every morning on the highway saw his mother being run over by a truck and she died in his arms. 5 meters from the off-ramp into the school street. A few weeks later he's in AFAL, English, first additional language, and the teacher, a real prick, he's been seen taking pics of some girls, started talking crap about the kid because he wasn't paying attention in class. Now listen, this kid is a frickin' butch 16-year-old. He asked the teacher politely to stop. The teacher continued and the kid broke down, thinking about his mother and all of the crap, of course. The teacher yells at him to go cry at his mother's grave and spare the classroom his crap. The kid leaps over his table and starts beating the hell out of the teacher. Saw it from the window, quite entertained I must say. It made national news, South Africa, Berglum kid attacks teacher. The kid was expelled, investigation launched, teacher was subsequently laid off because the whole thing was recorded by the class cameras. Hats off to you kid whose name I forgot, I enjoyed watching that beatdown. Boarded up the door during a practice lockdown she thought was real and gave a lot of the kids' classroom items to use as weapons. She even taught me to go for the neck with the scissors she gave me and my friend. Halfway through the school year, my high school manufacturing teacher was talking badly about his wife. Apparently he was kicked out the house and staying at a friend's place. I'm 100% sure he showed up hungover and or high for the rest of the year. He teaches manufacturing, So kids are using saws and he's in his office with his head down taking a nap. He's also a veteran and he would get very irritated some days and blow up. He would blame it on Agent Orange, yet he was like early 40s at the time. Anyways, he's still talking smack about his wife. He asked students to help him move stuff out of his house, and if accidentally knock my wife down the stairs, that's okay. One morning, the cops come in and arrest him for domestic violence. The class just didn't have a teacher for the rest of the day. I had a teacher that recorded videos of a disabled student peeing, 6-year-old boy. He stuck a camera to the bottom of the sink with silly putty. Was only caught cause the camera fell on the ground. Funny thing was, he was my cross-country coach and used to make all the girls circle around him, lay down and open our legs. He called it the giving birth stretch. Even weirder thing, he had a record of being a peeping Tom and already went to jail a few times. Still got hired though. Props to the US public school system. She was giving Tums as rewards/treats to third graders for getting questions right. She told them it was candy. For those of you who don't know what Tums are, they're antacids. So definitely not candy. He took a crap in the middle of the hallway after school. Didn't clean it up and people found it the next day. Went to a Christian school. Teacher got fired just for having a sticker on a moped saying fast as fuck. Middle school principal for stealing 2 pairs of dress pants and a shirt from a department store. Took PCP, stole a car, crashed that car, jumped on top of other cars and caused a pileup. All while butt naked, except for his socks. He used to always try to get me to join the wrestling team and used to call everybody grasshopper. He was a weird dude. One of the reasons was that he accidentally ordered a ton of clay to the school. Literally a ton. There was a 4th grade teacher at my school who made a kid cry in class. The parents pulled them out of the school and sent him to another school. One day apparently she went to that school claiming she was sent there from the school to monitor the school. She went directly to the class that the kid was in and monitored it. When the kid told his parents, they went to the principal's office to complain and the principal said they didn't send her. The sum of it was that she got fired for stalking a kid. Food technology teacher wrote nicknames for students next to their real names to help her remember who's who. Must have been pretty extreme to get her fired. In high school, our carpentry/woodworking teacher was fired. One morning when we came into his class, he took us all out back and opened up his van. Inside was a dead deer that he insisted he was going to turn into beef jerky and sell some other cuts to students. He then asked some students to drag this carcass through the entire wood shop class, which was like 3 regular classrooms combined, mind you. And then hung it on a hook in a closet next to his office. Next day we had a new teacher. And nobody got deer jerky. Had 2 instances. First, 4th grade, social studies. Mr. Q, weird guy. Always had a spit bubble when he talked. I'll always remember when he taught us War World II. When talking about the Holocaust, he told us women were lucky to have 3 holes so they could hide their wedding rings. He wasn't fired for that, of course, even though a bunch of 9-year-olds were WTFing. He was fired because one day the class clown made fun of his spit bubble too blatantly, so he picked him up and literally threw him out the class. Then picked up his desk and threw it after him. We were stunned. The noise was incredible and obviously other teachers noticed. I never saw him again. The second one was a young teacher. Maybe 25? She was my freshman religion teacher at my Catholic high school. She got pregnant early on and couldn't hide it after a while. The school caught on and fired her for not being married and having a kid. They said her values didn't align with the school's. She sued the hell out of them. Football coach that was not only letting students with concussions play, he was encouraging it if they were his starters or first string. High school chemistry teacher used to be a porn star and everyone found out by watching her video called Anal Cravings 13. It spread like wildfire and shortly after she was gone. Her son went to our school and this wasn't the first time it's happened. She changed her name and I think she was on Dr. Phil. Married teacher, 40s, female, dating 17-year-old student. Crazy thing was that they barely tried to hide it. She would sign him out of classes for club activities or field trips. He called her by her first name in front of other students. He would drive her car. Yo, Stacy. Give me the keys. I heard him yell at her once after class. Finally his parents found a raunchy love letter she wrote him and stormed into school to confront her and the administration. Last I heard, she got a divorce, they're still together, and she's now principal of an all-girls Catholic school. She was snorting cocaine on her desk during passing period. She locked the door and students looked in the window and videotaped. Ending up getting around the whole school, and she was taken out in handcuffs. My history teacher was a very kind old man and one of my favorite teachers. He was getting close to retirement and had about 5 years left. Towards the end he had an angina attack during our class and was sent to hospital for a week later. He came back a month later and announced he would be given an early retirement at the end of the year due to his health getting worse. On his last week he just had fun with all his classes. We were the last class he had on his last day, and he spent the class telling us his life story about growing up in Italy, meeting his wife, and how he nearly missed his interview to be a teacher in our school, which was his first, last and only teaching job. I still see him around sometimes and he's in good health. You're the best, Mr. C. Not my teacher, but a teacher at my school got fired for being trans. The school board made up other reasons, but it was a load of crap. A teacher had us correct the grammar of the aside letter written by a school SHOter. High school chemistry teacher failed to pay his rent on 2 storage units. When they opened them up, they were full of stolen things from the school and students. Teacher sent out an email to all parents saying that our school will be the next victim of a school beaming, not saying that he will do it, just that it will be beamed. Next day he is wearing a bulletproof vest at school. Every Monday a teacher got to hold their own presentation in front of the school, and the same teacher decided to hold a presentation about recruiting U.S. students to go fight in Israel military. He showed pictures of him fighting there as well. English teacher sent flowers and creepy Facebook messages to a sophomore. There was a whole thing in the New York Post about it. They even had some quotes from Facebook statuses. One was, "I'm not a gynecologist, but I'll take a look inside." We had subs for the rest of the year, even though he got arrested in like the second month of school. There were 2. First guy, Mr. T, was kind of the cool teacher. He did his job all right, but he made it a lot of fun. He had a definite wild streak. He hated when the principal, Mr. B, wouldn't leave the room, and one he flipped off Mr. B while he was leaving under the guise of scratching his head. The year after I graduated, it sounds like he got a little too crazy and defiant and had to leave. I liked Mr. T, so I was sad to hear, but I also understood why the school pushed him out. He was edgy when I had him, and it sounds like he went over the top the year after. Second guy, Mr. A, was a gym coach who taught something else, got caught texting female students. I don't know the details, but I know it crossed the line enough for him to get canned, leave the city, and presumably lose his marriage. He threw a chair at a student. He missed, but it left a dent in the metal locker it hit. Bonus points because he was a priest as well as a teacher. She pulled an entire condom up her arm during social studies class and told us if a guy said he was too big for one to run the other way. This and throwing things at students. Books, desks, pencils. Poor lady was going through a divorce. Eccentric history teacher was pretending to fight a giant mosquito and kicked a girl in the head. Public speaking teacher fired for making students compare Trump's speeches to Hitler's. This was before the 2016 election. My school was more on the conservative side, so a bunch of kids reported her. One of the best teachers I've ever had. And yes, there were some uncomfortable similarities in the speeches. This was a new teacher at our prep school. He encouraged us to deface school property by telling us to rip out the introduction in our poetry textbooks. He then taught us to think for ourselves and seize the day because life is short. As a direct consequence of this, one of the students in our class committed suicide. Her ex-husband also worked at the school. Some hours were swapped around and she doesn't get the memo. She goes to her class to find her husband. She flips, yelling that he stole so much from her life and now he's stealing her class. The other chem phys teacher we had at our school got fired for just being really insane. Apparently she had a habit of showing really unnecessary experiments using fish in class, like filling a fish tank with Mountain Dew and putting them in to see how they'd react. Word got around, and the principal had a hard time believing until they did some digging and found out that was indeed the case. Not only was she out of a job, but apparently banned at PetSmart too. I never had her class, but I had friends who did, met her once. Really unsettling person. I hope she got the mental help she needs. My religious studies teacher basically let a kid die. He had very bad asthma and would regularly have asthma attacks. The whole school knew this. He was having an attack in her class and she claimed he was lying to get out of school. Instead of letting him have his inhaler, she sent him out of the room into the cold corridors. Cold and an asthma attack don't mix well. He unfortunately died in the corridor. She got sacked and nearly sent to prison but was let off basically. History teacher is teaching the Civil War and a black administrator walks in and the teacher says, speaking of slavery. Gone the next day. Math teacher roundhouse kicked a kid for answering without raising his hand. Substitute teacher for a current events class. The class was discussing the Iraq War and she made a passing comment about starting concentration camps for Muslims. Principal was informed and she was asked to leave with the principal taking over the class for the rest of the day. Slapped a 6-year-old across the face because she asked to go to the bathroom and got upset when the teacher said no. She was immediately let go. We had counselors come in and help the class manage with what happened. We drew pictures of the teacher, all of us hated her, and then after, we tore them all up and threw it in the trash. The lead singer of The Killers went to my high school, about 10 years before I did. The song Andy You're a Star was written about a bully that went to school with the Killers guy. The bully grew up to be a coach at the high school when I was in school. He definitely peaked in high school. Everyone thought it was hilarious to sing Andy You're a Star around the coach. The song essentially says he peaked in high school and would always be a bully. Well, eventually the coach got so mad he choked a student who was singing the song. So, he got fired. The Killers' most well-known song is Mr. Brightside. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and tell us what story shocked you the most. Do you have your own teacher scandal you can share in the comments below?